Okay, are we still in the morning? I guess good morning. Oh, shoot. I would like to call the meeting of Senate Finance Committee to order. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us here, one person in Carson City and no one in Las Vegas, and anyone who is listening online. Thank you. Before we move on to today's agenda, please remember to turn off your electronic devices or mute them. Today, we will be taking a break from closing budgets and will instead hear a bill. Senate Bill 458 makes a supplemental appropriation to the Office of Secretary of State for an unanticipated shortfall related to travel, operating, and information services expenses. I'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 458 and invite Mr. Chiara. Didn't want to come out. Chief Deputy Secretary of the State up to the witness table, and please go ahead when you are ready.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will forego the series of bits I had planned because this is a Saturday morning meeting. This bill is a supplemental request for funding from the Secretary of State's office. I will avoid walking through the entire history of this funding. I just want to bring to the attention of the committee that in our previous legislative session, our budget hearing, the Secretary of State's office made a request that if we were going to transition from from paying the fees, the credit card fees on behalf of customers, to having customers pay for those credit card fees themselves, as most other state agencies do, if we could utilize at least a portion of the $6 million appropriated for credit card funds for information technology improvements to the Secretary of State's office to deal with long-standing technological debt. That did not happen in relation to that budget closing. However, after the legislature adjourned, I had a number of meetings, our office, a number of meetings with folks from the Interim Finance Committee as well as the Governor's Finance Office, where we asked for clarification if it would be possible to have a work program to transfer some of these funds from the credit card fee account to another account to cover some of these IT expenses. And we were told tentatively yes, with the Interim Finance Committee's approval. Roughly a year later, after a work program for such a purpose was on an IFC agenda, then was taken off due to a technical issue. Another technical issue was pointed out from GFO, and we were told that we would not be able to do a work program. We should ask for contingency funds. We worked with the Governor's Finance Office for a contingency fund request. We were told that and understandably so, there was a lot of uncertainty around wildfire season and no one wanted to take anything out of the contingency fund unless absolutely necessary. We were asked if we could hold on to this until the legislature for a supplemental request. We did so, and that supplemental request is the one in front of you now. I am more than happy to answer questions about what these expenses are for or any of the circumstances leading to this request, and I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I need to pause just for a second before we ask questions because I forgot to ask for a roll call. So, Ms. Anderson, I am so sorry to take your job, but go ahead, please, and call roll.
Senator Buck. Here. Senator Cannizzaro. Here. Senator Neal. Here. Senator Wen. Here. Senator Stone. Here. Senator Taylor. Present. Senator Titus. Here. Chair Dondero Loop.
And I am here. Thank you very much. And please mark all members present. All right, we'll go back to questions, and I believe Senator Wynn has one.
I vaguely recall this. So was there statutory authority coming out of the 2023 legislative session for those credit card fees to be used for information technology services, any of these things that you are now before you here today?
Thank you for the question, Senator Wynn. Gabriel DeCare for the record. The answer to that question is no. However, at the time, we were advised otherwise by both LCB and GFO, which is the only reason why there was even a work program on an agenda in the first place. The lack of statutory authority was pointed out very late in the game, actually, as we were working our way through our budget preparation process.
You mean leading into this budgetary cycle?
leading in from, apologies, from fiscal year 24 into fiscal year 25, as we were attempting to close that budget and get that work program through, that's when it was pointed out to us that that authority did not in fact exist.
And just to make the record clear, you cannot put something on for a work session without it going through GFO.
Gabriel DeCare, for the record, that's correct.
And this comes to you today because it was at the recommendation of GFO to bring it through this supplemental request during the legislative session?
Yes, Senator Wynn. Gabriel DeCare, for the record. Yes, Senator Wynn, that's correct.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Additional questions from the committee? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for that partial explanation. Well, you spent the $773,000 specifically on what?
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. I believe we have provided these documents to LCB. I can run through a number of them at a high level. I also want to say for the record that our accounting team did everything it could to make this supplemental request as small as possible. If there were salary savings, vacancy savings, if there was money we could move from other accounts, we did so. We were understanding that it would not behoove our agency to come to this body and ask for additional funds. We did everything we could to pay for what we could prior to this supplemental request. So approximately, well, more than half of these funds went for various IT services, including the services of one contractor to assist with a number of the IT projects that we had in the Secretary of State's office. I can go into brief detail on some of these. For example, one of these is $51,000 for a program called Validate. Validate is software that analyzes bank accounts and thousands of transactions at a time, allowing the law enforcement officers in our securities division to be able to rapidly review transactions when they are conducting investigations into potential criminal activity, criminal financial activity. Without that software, our law enforcement officers would have no choice but to go through those bank records manually, and it would not be.
I think if I might interrupt you, if you would get a copy of that, I know if you send it to Fiscal, if Fiscal would send it to us, I would be happy with that. So you have a copy. The reason for my question, the direction I'm going with my question is, you spent money that you did not have in your budget?
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. After discussing the possibility of a work program to transfer those credit card funds with IFC and GFO, yes, we did. If we knew when we started putting these funding requests together, if we knew that we did not have statutory authority to utilize any of those funds, we would not have done so.
But follow up if I might, Madam Chair. What I'm getting out is you were relying on some other source of funding. You had a budget for this type of work. You have an IT budget, you have an information budget, you have a travel budget, all of the above categories that we're going to see that you have sent out to staff, but I want to see. But you overspent in those categories, not knowing that you didn't have that money and that you would have to go to some other resource to have that money. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus, and I apologize if I am not entirely clear on how the ins and outs of some of the state budgetary process works. Again, after reaching out to IFC and GFO, we were under the impression that we could transfer the general fund dollars in our credit card fee category to other categories to cover some of these expenses. So if the question is, did we spend more than was budgeted in those accounts under the previous budget? Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Did we spend more than the agency was budgeted as a whole for funds from the general fund? No, we did not.
Thank you. It's my understanding that you reverted money back to the state at some point. Could you tell me about that?
Gabriel DeCare for the record. Yes, Senator Titus, we've reverted $3 million in unspent credit card fee monies at the end of fiscal year 24. Another $3 million was reverted at this past IFC meeting in April. We have reverted somewhere around, I believe it's around $8 million, maybe more, from our one-shots, and I believe we still have roughly $5 million more to revert. The majority of that is statutory funds that were set aside for repaying counties for costs related to the election and mail ballots.
And thank you for that. So I understand that you did send money back, but they were on accounts, separate, different accounts with different funding. And I guess my biggest concern is that in the accounts that you identified that you overspent, regardless of how much money you spent or sent back in other accounts, you made a conscious choice, your department did, to spend this money that you did not have in those budgets. Regardless of what you're assuming, maybe, you spent money in accounts that you did not have enough money to spend.
Thank you for the question, Senator Titus. And again, we were under the impression, after speaking with IFC and GFO staff, that we did have authority to work program and move funds that would be unspent otherwise to cover these costs. I would additionally like to say that all of these costs, any of these expenses that are moving forward, have been built into our next budget, which was just closed by this committee. So there will be none of these costs are unaccounted for in our budget for the next biennium.
Moving forward. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions.
Yes, additional questions? Senator Nguyen.
Thank you for the follow-up. I wish someone from GFO was here. I think, unfortunately, this was something that we had talked about during the 2023 legislative session about your agency's ability to use these credit card savings, I guess, to fund that. And it sounds like the only reason that you did is not only was your agency under the impression that that's nearly $6 million would be something that you would be able to utilize to make up for some of these costs that are included in the bill here today, but also you had that same advice, and that was probably the same understanding at some point of GFO, because they initially put things on for work sessions to transfer those funds over there, as well as on multiple occasions. So is that kind of my understanding? That honestly, it sounds like everyone was kind of on the wrong understanding of what kind of authority we had to do, like keep those funds within there?
Thank you for the question, Senator Nguyen. Gabriel DeCare for the record. It does seem like a number of folks inside of our office, as well as outside of our office, had different understandings of what authority existed at the time, and it seems like there was some confusion. Yes, and if I can just add, the reason why when we initially brought up this question immediately after the 2023 legislative session, when we were discussing this with staff from various agencies, the fact that our office spoke about that request specifically on the record when we were requesting our budget, and I believe there was some back and forth with some members of the joint Finance and Ways committees about that possibility. If we had, for example, spoken with our customers about what the impact of that would be, we had the commercial register agents were on board, and there were some folks who were concerned that if we made that change, that it would potentially affect state revenue if we were no longer covering those fees. But fiscal year 2024 had the highest amount of state revenue from the Secretary of State's office ever. So we did our homework before we made the request. We made the request. There was a lot of back and forth on how to carry out the request. And then the final answer was that we had to come to this body for a supplemental.
And this might be a question for our staff. Do other agencies that have the savings for the credit card fees, do they stay within those individual agency accounts, or do they revert to, I guess, the general fund?
I'm going to jump in here and ask Mr. Thorley to give us just a little more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Vice Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. So I'll answer the Vice Chair's question. this is a little bit of a unique situation here. So under the current law, state agencies that offer service that costs money are able to, and that they accept electronic forms of payment, credit card, things like that, they get to decide as the department whether to charge a fee to the customers for those electronic transactions or whether to not do that and assume that as a cost of doing business. So that's statutory authority that each department agency has. Under the prior administration, prior secretary, the decision was made to have that be a cost of doing business. So it was not charged to the customers. And the legislature then funded the Secretary of State's office to be able to cover those fees, approximately $3 million per year. When the new secretary, and I guess I'll answer or provide a little background here. So when the new secretary came in, the budget that was submitted to the 2023 legislature was largely prepared by the prior Secretary of State. There was only a month or so into the new Secretary Aguilar's administration when that budget was presented and heard before the 2023 legislature. And as the Chief Deputy Secretary of State mentioned, they made some requests during their budget hearing, since it was not their budget that was submitted, it was from the predecessor, that they would like consideration because they were planning on starting to charge customers a fee for the electronic transactions, which would then save money in their budget. They would no longer need the $3 million appropriation per year to cover those costs, that they would like consideration to be able to use that money for other things. When the 2023 legislature closed their budgets, those other things were not included, so they were funded for the credit card fees that they were no longer planning on charging, and they did make that change so that, or I'm sorry, that they were planning on starting to charge customers. So they did make that change. Customers now that do business with the Secretary of State's office pay that fee, and so they did not need that $3.1 million per year. So it's a little unique in this situation because they were appropriated the money. Most agencies that charge customers that convenience fee for that transaction, they're just not appropriated the money. So there's nothing for them to keep because they're not appropriated it. They were appropriated the money that they no longer were planning on using. So it was just during this transition period that was a little unique there.
I appreciate that background. I guess my question is are there other agencies that charge the customer those fees, and where did those fees and where did those millions go?
Wayne Thorligan, for the record, Secretary of State's, or used to be the Secretary of State's office, LCB Fiscal. So those fees, they have to be set in a way that it's not money making. So it has to cover the cost, the merchant fees, so the credit card companies and the other financial institutions that charge these interchange fees. It's set to cover those costs, but it's not a way for agencies to make money to fund their budget. So that money simply goes to cover the cost from the merchants, and it's run through the Treasurer's office.
And so any of the, I don't want to call it a windfall, but any of that additional money that flows from there after covering the costs, it goes into just general fund, reverts to general fund.
So Wayne Thorligan, for the record. So there's no windfall. The money that's collected from the customers goes to the Treasurer's office to cover the cost of the merchants. So there's no money that goes into the general fund. And again, this is a very unique situation with the Secretary of State's office where they were appropriated general funds to cover the cost of these fees, but the fees are now being picked up by the customers.
Got it.
So with other agencies that charge customers a fee for electronic transactions, they're just simply not appropriated the money, so there's no money in their budget.
Thank you.
If I may, Senator, Chair Dondero Luke, Gabriel DeCara, for the record, two quick follow-ups. One is when we started working this through with the Treasurer's office, it was almost immediately after Secretary Aguilar took office, they told us that there were very, very few state agencies that covered the credit card fee costs for customers. It was one and maybe one or two others. I don't remember which they were off the top of my head. We were, I believe, the highest volume customer that was still covering customer credit card fee costs. And the second thing I want to add is, having heard from both LCB staff and Secretary of State staff internally, these costs were almost impossible to estimate. So even though money was appropriated for the purpose of paying credit card fees, we almost always there were almost always more fees than money that was appropriated, and the Secretary of State's office had to either make up the difference with, for example, salary savings, or come to the legislature to ask for additional funds. So it was not although it was a nice bonus for the customer, it was not practical. And since we have made the choice since the start of fiscal year 24 to make this transition, it has been very beneficial for the agency, we feel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions, comments? All right. With that, if you would step back, we will do real quickly, like speed. Anyone would like to make a comment, either Las Vegas or Carson City? I see no one. So we will go on the line for support. AVH, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but we have no callers.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to opposition. And I know, we're all out of sync. We're all out of sync. We are going to go to opposition. AVH, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, we have no callers for opposition.
And we'll go to neutral, and I'll ask AVH again. Is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there's still no callers for neutral.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any closing comments from you?
Yes, Chair, Gabriel DeCare for the record. I just want to put on the record that Secretary Aguilar takes his responsibility to the taxpayers of Nevada very seriously. If we had known that we did not have authority to spend any of these funds, we would not have done so. However, we need to do the responsible thing and ask this body to make up for the difference. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we were hoping to see the secretary today. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 458 and now move into the work session. Committee members, it is my intention that to take a vote on Senate Bill 458 at this time. And if you have any questions, we have fiscal staff here. Otherwise, if there are no questions, I will accept a motion to do pass Senate Bill 458.
So moved to do pass Senate Bill 458.
Thank you very much, Senator Wynn. A second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that the Secretary of State was acting in an unprecedented manner, that none of the other agencies have used these credit card fees for any other purpose, that the GFO may have given them some information that then turned out to be not correct, but the ultimate responsibility, it falls on the agency, that they knew they didn't have this money. It wasn't in hand before they committed it, and I am going to be a no on this. We hold all the other agencies accountable for overspending, and as I just cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments? I understand your concerns. We just finished a joint hearing where we had not the same types of money, but the same thing happened where somebody had okayed something that wasn't okayed. So thank you very much, Senator Titus. So with that, committee members, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. A nay from Senator Titus, Senator Stone, and Senator Buck. And motion passes. And thank you very much. And the floor statement will go to Senator Wynn. And with that, we will now move into public comment. And I see no one here in Carson City, no one in Las Vegas. Is there anyone on the line, AVH, for public comment?
Chair, we have no callers to provide public comment.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will finish our agenda for the day, and I want to thank everyone for sticking around for just a bit longer, and we'll see you on Monday, and this meeting is adjourned.